to step through tonight. I will say with the hour, we kind of have about 30 minutes probably for slides, and thinking that it will leave the rest of the time for question and answer. And I guess we're hoping for more of a conversation collaboration. So if you want questions, ask them. We don't need to wait till the end or anything. So I guess with that, I'll kind of step through our slides. Well, I thought I had the clicker. There we go. So kind of the agenda for tonight is going to focus on a little bit on a recap. You guys heard from city staff in April about this topic. So we're going to just give a little more background just to refresh everyone's memory, and then talk about the study we did. And we have a couple areas that focused on data collection. We got a lot of information about your inventory, kind of your operations. We will step through the methodology for how we view you have options to do a conversion of the street lighting systems, as well as some of the analytics and number crunching that we did, and finally to give some recommendations from what we learned from doing the study and working with your staff. And I guess real quick, just to recap, we did meet 4 times over the course of the summer and spring with kind of a group, several members of city council and city staff, operations and engineering. So it was a good group to kind of represent all sides of the issue. Really helped us get our hands around the topic and I think get a good understanding of the recommendations from our standpoint. So start with the kind of recap of what you heard in April, and really it's focused on a couple areas. A big piece is you have high voltage street lighting in City of West Allis, which is unique. You're one of a very few communities, Milwaukee is another, that historically built up street lighting infrastructure with high voltage systems instead of low voltage. So it just kind of puts you in a position of having kind of unique needs, and that sets you apart in terms of just a little more challenging than the normal circumstance with bringing infrastructure up to kind of current standards. So just a little bit, your systems are vastly in the high voltage. Only 7% are the parallel circuit or the low voltage type. That you ultimately would be in better position if you were 100% low voltage. And they're run by 23 substations. If you're familiar, they're the large green electrical substations that's kind of buried in the neighborhoods throughout the city, for a total of 76 high voltage circuits that run the lighting throughout the city. This is just a map kind of depicting the high voltage or the pink shaded area. So, generally the whole city or portions of the whole city is run by high voltage street lighting systems. So, the reasons, there are several reasons to think in terms of why the low voltage conversion is a good thing and ultimately your goal. The first of which, safety. Think in terms of your typical systems that run street lighting are 120, 240 volts. The series circuiting that you guys maintain throughout the city is upwards of 4,800, nearly 5,000 volts. So extremely high voltage, and it exposes not just let's say your staff, your operations staff, but the public, contractors working in the city to a very risky situation when it comes to contact with these circuits. Maintenance is unique in that historically to run street lighting high voltage was a great idea because you needed kind of a few substations to run a lot of lights, but let's say if you have one hit, there's a lot of lights can go down as a result. So you kind of have a domino effect if there's issues. So you spend a lot of time finding out where those happen, and a lot of time, materials to fix outages when they do occur. And the same thing when let's say some underground wiring gets hit, it can take out a lot of lights. So the blackouts, you probably are familiar with these failures will take out not just one light, but maybe blocks of lighting. Another big issue is bidding, and when you do have street projects or infrastructure projects that update and upgrade the lighting, it's a very unique, there's not a lot of contractors with the equipment, the expertise, the manpower to work with this type of lighting. So you've had challenges finding adequate contracting forces to actually do the work, just because it's a specialty. And then materials, this is a big one. The cable, the transformers, a lot of the infrastructure that you need to, say, just keep it updated and repaired isn't manufactured anymore. And we've heard that you're kind of fishing for things overseas and outdated equipment that really isn't made anymore, but might be in a stockpile somewhere. So it's very challenging to repair and replace these systems. There we go. So I'll touch a little bit on some of the ideas that came out from April. That ultimately some of these are in our study. We'll talk about more later. So solar was an idea as maybe that would be an option to consider for updating the lighting. In kind of a quick sense, it's more of a isolated lighting is a solution, but it's very costly and it's got a lot of challenges just with the climate and the weather here. Solar is kind of something we didn't take into account with the study. I think you guys heard that early on in April. Just maybe not the right fit for a citywide application. Touch on there's the picture in the lower right is a retrofitting of your existing lights with transformers, and this is something that you could install to just transform that high voltage down to a lower voltage to run, let's say, more modern equivalent lights. This is something we'll talk about a little bit more later in the presentation, but something to be clear on as this is very much something we consider as a component of what you should plan for, but it is not necessarily a long-term fix. This will just be a stopgap measure. And the reason we did take it into account with the study is you're very likely going to have to do some of this, depending on funding levels and things of that nature, but it's something that you're not really investing in a long-term solution by doing that. So I guess we'll talk more about that later, but just to be clear, that's a little unique in that it doesn't really achieve the ultimate goals. And the next two are contracting with We Energies. We do talk about this with the study. We'll have some more information on the costs and things involved in a little bit. I will admit this is also something that is a little more applicable to new subdivisions, new neighborhoods where the electrical infrastructure that kind of serves the houses is also the same that runs the lights. We're talking about renovating existing neighborhoods, so it's a little bit of an apples and oranges fit with asking the utility to do this, but we do talk about it. And then complete circuit conversions is we have a couple different ways kind of doing it internally versus contracting it out. That's where we're talking about replacing the circuiting and really doing the full upgrade. So I'm going to step away and let Jake kind of talk a little bit of the data collection part of the study and let him go through the next couple slides. I don't know if there are any questions before we jump into the study.
Great. So Mike mentioned a lot of the materials for these high voltage systems are obsolete and can no longer be found or manufactured. The most predominant of these materials is the low pressure sodium luminaires. Your city has over 3,000 of these in use right now, and I believe you found out in February, maybe slightly before that these were no longer going to be manufactured. So in lieu of that, the DPW made an emergency purchase of about 7,000 of these. And we have them, or he has them stockpiled somewhere. But essentially, once these run out, those low pressure sodium bulbs can no longer be fixed or replaced. These bulbs have a typical 3-year lifespan, so about 1,000 or so go out per year and need to be replaced. Therefore, after about 7 years, you will start to go completely dark, and after 10 years, all of these low pressure sodiums will be unusable. So obviously, something needs to be done here. This would be the most dire need for this street lighting conversion. We took into account the 7,000 that's in backstock compared to the 3,000 or so that are in operation, and we figured that we need to convert approximately 225 of these per year in order to keep pace with our backstock. This pace is a minimum pace. It doesn't really take into account any sort of premature failures that might occur any breakages that might happen in storage, you know, any unforeseen circumstances with the type of bulbs, because there is 35 watt and 55 watt, so there's sort of a balancing act we have to do there. So this 225 is the minimum bar that we set, but anything we can do above that obviously is what we're shooting for.
I guess real quick, just this is a very important thing in terms of it sets the time frame for really the whole study. That this is you bought the last ones that exist, so there aren't any more. If they run out or you use them faster than maybe what we project or your normal rate, there is no replacement. You're going to spend, that's where those transformers came into play, that you're going to have to start doing those, which are stopgap kind of measures.
Just a quick question. You're saying you're going to replace 225 per year. Once you replace those 225, that's 225 more bulbs that come into the stockpile, correct? Is that considered into the number?
That is assuming that those 225 that get replaced are at the end of their lifespan.
At
and
the
are no
beginning of their
longer-
lifespan. Well, your assumption is that they're at the end.
We're replacing them at the end of their lifespan.
But we still would have those left
Yeah, and they
over
might have a
if they had
year.
a year left on
Yeah,
them,
they might
6
have a year
months
left on them.
We could prolong that 10-year darkness thing to maybe 12 or 14.
Yeah, you can buy yourself a little bit of
Little
time.
time, okay.
The exact numbers on those are kind of difficult to
Yes.
assess right now. So for all intents and purposes here, we
Okay.
did leave that part out. But
I guess I would also caution that it's a little probably cumbersome to try to save lamps and keep the old ones that might have a year left. And we didn't really at all kind of factor in salvage of anything that's out there
Right.
now.
When a lamp reaches the end of its lifespan, does it just fail, or we're rotating them out automatically?
so these we actually rotate out automatically every 3 years because they start to go dim.
get
and
dimmer.
They actually stress the system more.
Okay. They draw
So,
more.
Yeah. Yep.
And I guess the last piece here is, you know, as these lamps kind of go in that 3-year cycle, that was how we established priorities. So kind of knowing which systems would be at that year 3, those are the ones we kind of projected. Those would be the ones you update first, and to kind of just follow with the replacement of, you know, the next 3-year cycle would then be kind of 3 years down the line with a priority list.
So you have a map showing where you think are, later on, you're gonna come to a map saying, do these first, do this first?
We don't have a map, but we have a general idea of the order that we want to proceed. Yeah. So I guess for the purposes of this study, we're using 13 years as kind of the benchmark to get everything converted. Once you get down to like year 14 and 15, you're talking 4 or 5 luminaires, and technically that's all going to be covered by a circuit, so it's kind of negated. So 13 years is essentially the benchmark that we're using here to get these low pressure sodium luminaires converted. So by doing 225 per year, we do need to get rid of about 47% of all the luminaires that are in operation. We felt the first part of data collection obviously is to provide an inventory of what the city has for lights. So 47% being those high voltage, low pressure sodium luminaires. Those are our priority number 1. 30% of the luminaires are high voltage, high pressure sodium, which some of these kind of are on the same, some of them share circuits with low pressure. So you have some circuits that have both LPS, low pressure sodium, or high HPS, high pressure sodium. But then you also have some high voltage circuits that only have high pressure luminaires. So our second priority, once we get rid of the low pressure, would be to get rid of the remaining high pressure. So as I mentioned, that 13-year being our benchmark, we kind of split this project up into a couple different time frames. The first time frame was that first slide, the existing. This would be after we get rid of all of the circuits that have low pressure sodium luminaires. We estimate that we'd be about 70% LED low voltage, with 20% of the system remaining being that high voltage, high pressure sodium. And then obviously the ultimate goal would be 100% low voltage LED. So that is the final time benchmark, and that's approximately 19 years at the pace that we're kind of indicating here.
And I guess just to reiterate too, because it's a little bit, there are 2 things that are really at play. It's you're running out of low pressure sodium, they don't make them anymore. And then you're also dealing with high voltage circuiting that has both types. We understand high pressure sodium, let's say a couple years from now, they're probably going to tell you the same thing, that we're going to stop making those as well. they aren't there yet. That's a little more of a historically prevalent technology. So you've got more time, but the reality is that's going to go out just like low pressure sodium recently has.
So the second portion of our data collection effort was to look at the energy being used and what the potential savings are there. The existing energy calculations that we came up with using just a per wattage per luminaire basis, just under 400,000 annually. We assume or we estimate that, I don't know if there's a pointer on here, but the black line that's just over 300,000, everything above that is heat loss waste from ballast and inefficiencies in the old luminaires and the old products. So the kind of odd thing here is that after we convert all of these low pressure sodium circuits to LED, we're actually going to see a jump in energy. And that's because these low pressure sodiums do use less wattage. That was the whole purpose of installing these in the first place, is because they're low wattage. So that first 13-year benchmark, there will be a slight uptick in energy usage. But we anticipate that upon full conversion to LED, getting rid of all of that waste energy, we should see an ultimate decrease in energy at the end of this entire project. And then we also looked at the maintenance being spent on just maintaining and operating these systems. We did a P3 study for Milwaukee a couple years back, a public-private partnership where they looked at possibly putting all their lights into a private entity instead of their own. And we got a lot of numbers during that study to kind of correlate the cost of a high-pressure sodium light versus a LED light. Unfortunately, those were all low voltage. They did not have any high voltage, let alone low pressure sodium. But we were able to kind of back calculate a lot of that information and estimate that you're spending a little over $200,000 right now annually on just maintaining the street lighting out there. Again, we should see extremely large decreases in that as we get rid of the high voltage systems because, as Mike mentioned before, they're costly, they're hard to maintain, there's no materials out there to purchase. And then ultimately, on full conversion to LED, you'll see essentially minimal amount spent on maintaining the street lighting system. So it just kind of exacerbates the fact that doing this project will save money in the long run. To kind of put those numbers into context, we took the energy spent and the maintenance spent, divided over the amount of households in West Allis and kind of came up with a per person or per taxpayer, if you want, cost. So right now we would estimate maybe $20 a household. And just to kind of show that savings at the end of this project, we should be closer to 12. So it's, you know, cutting it almost in half. It's a substantial number to decrease. Finally, we looked at the different rebate opportunities that are available for this project. The only real option that we found at this point in time, at least, that was available is through Focus on Energy. And they do provide incentives for replacing street lighting with LED. That is based on the amount of light that is put out by each light or by each luminaire. And we figure using that metric, there's almost $250,000 on the table for rebate incentives with this project. I'll touch back on that retrofit with the little transformers that we kind of mentioned. There is no real incentive for replacing those. There is Focus on Energy offers what's called a mogul screw base, rebate opportunity where it's per wattage replaced, but since we're going from low pressure sodium to LED, low pressure sodium being a lower wattage, we actually don't see any savings that way. So the only real savings is through a full conversion of the street lighting system.
Quick question on that.
Yeah.
Is that per year or over the?
It's a one-time. That would be at the end. And I did speak with the representative from Focus on Energy, and we can lock in these rates if we know that we're going to have projects going for a long time. So if they do decide to change these and lower the amount back, we can have it locked in for 10 years, 13 years, and make sure that we're getting the amount of money back that we.
And if they increase the rates in the future, we'd be eligible for the new higher rate?
I would hope so. I would hope so.
I think they will bank kind of an amount of money in the program for you guys. Because there's been years where the program's kind of gone, that doesn't get funded by the state. So it's, if you commit to a long-term, say, plan, they will say, well, we'll hold $250,000 to pay that off year over year and not give that out to other communities, other rebate opportunities.
So I guess that's kind of the extent of our data collection in a nutshell. If there's any questions at this point with those numbers, we'll move on to the different construction methodologies.
I can grab that. Any thoughts? So I guess when it comes to construction methodology to do the upgrades that we've been talking about, there's essentially three ways we looked at it. There's doing it internally with city forces. There's contracting it out to, producing plans and sending them out to bid and having contractors do the work. And then there's doing kind of a negotiation with We Energies, and similar to having a contractor do it, you'd ask them to do it. So those are the three primary ways we looked at. Just to start a little bit, we learned a lot about how currently your city forces operate. You've got about 11 total staff dedicated to just electrical operations and maintenance. Things like traffic signals, street lighting, city facilities, electrical facilities, basically overseeing and maintaining those. The primary duties are just routine maintenance, knock down poles, replacing things when they burn out, just basic stuff like that, and supporting your annual capital improvement projects that you do every year. So there's work put into that. So from an equipment standpoint, there's a boring rig that was recently purchased that's actually been working towards a couple projects that are these street lighting conversions that we've been talking about, and a hydrovac truck to do utility excavating, just for they kind of work together. That in some ways are shared with other departments, but their resources available currently. I mentioned, so there's a couple projects currently going on, circuits F1 and A3. One is just a couple blocks away, but these are the type of projects that we're talking about. So they're complete replacement of the infrastructure, going from high voltage to low voltage, and getting rid of the outdated high pressure, low pressure sodium in lieu of putting in LEDs. So right now those are being handled kind of using your forces. What that means, though, is that's kind of taking them away from the routine maintenance, and while it's working and they're doing it, it does kind of just divert the attention, plus it shares the attention, so they're maybe less productive than they could be if they were solely dedicated on that type of work, because they're bouncing kind of back and forth. So when we talk about having internal forces do the work, in the long run, this is talking about adding more capacity and dedicated staff. The way we've learned, just by kind of understanding the nature of the type of work, the magnitude of the projects, we kind of forecast 6 to 8 dedicated positions would have to be put on this to get that 225 per year rate, year over year over year. And that would be, like I said, dedicated to the circuit conversions, separate from the routine operations. It may mean additional boring rig and hydrovac trucks just to keep pace, because that's, the way we looked at it is maybe 4 different projects to get 225 per year, because they're circuits that you're going to take on individually. So if you take on one, you're taking on the whole thing. And average to get 225 is like 4 different projects. You might be in 4 different places all at once, and that equipment is hard to share in that fashion. So you might need more equipment, and like I said, that will leave existing staff to kind of focus on the routine maintenance, your capital improvement projects, and other things of that nature. We talked a lot in our meetings kind of leading up to this, that it's not that simple to kind of say we'll grab 6 to 8 qualified electricians. We understand there's been some challenges hiring people with some open positions currently, and there's a very competitive job market right now. So private sector is luring people with competitive pay, and just there's a lot of demand for electricians and electrical construction forces right now.
So may I ask you, Mr. Chair, if, per se, I mean, you mentioned about get out 3 bids out there, you know, whatever, through a private entity, what would be the, you know, the estimate cost if the city we hire within? And I said there is some problem with electrical, you know, getting electricians, you know. What would be the difference, say if we hire additional, say 4 or 5 electricians, and we hire, say, a private contractor? You know, to me, I mean, a contractor in the long range, or really in the long, annually, I'm sure he will, the price we're gonna be, even, like I said, we hire 5 additional employees, I mean, you gotta pay benefits and everything else, but if you hire a private contractor, I wonder what the cost would be. Maybe it could be.
We have a ton of, we got some,
We'll get
I
there.
mean,
We'll
we're
get
not
there.
no,
to
and
that.
we
We're
got,
not to that yet.
no, we have all, we'll have
there. It's
several
coming.
bar graphs that will
It's
will
coming,
do
yeah, I know
that.
it's
Right.
coming, yeah,
Yep.
I'm just saying that.
And I don't know, I mean, in a proportional sense, roughly, it's up 30%, is that fair? Basically increase of the way we looked at it. Contractors are more expensive, there's things you're paying for. That way, that doing it internally is more cost effective. We will talk about that, but there's a kind of a defined markup to have contractors do this work.
Yeah, I know we're not that far yet, but just the idea.
Yep.
like, throw it out there.
And we will step into that here shortly. I guess in basics, just the concept of if you do this in-house, that kind of assumes you're doing all the work. Let's say the conduit placement, pulling wires, pouring concrete bases, putting up poles, the whole thing is done in-house. And it's dependent on the ability to hire and maintain that dedicated workforce. It would assume you're gonna couple these dedicated, say, electricians to your road improvement project. So if you're gonna build a road, you're gonna have your guys go and do the streetlights at the same time. And just a kind of reiteration of if you don't keep pace with 225, then you're gonna have some of those folks out doing those retrofits. So you're gonna put the time in one way or the other. So by contrast, if we're talking about how does it work if you hire that work out and put plans out to bid, assumes kind of the opposite. Everything is outsourced. You have bid contractors doing that work. You're, in that sense, the way we calculate, you don't have any new city staff factored in. You're able to cover that with existing forces. You would likely see some degree of flexibility to have one contractor here, a different contractor here, and hypothetically you could cover more bases maybe in the same amount of time. We'll talk a little bit more about the challenges related to that, but that is maybe a more flexible route potentially. However, similar to the challenges you've seen hiring electricians, you've had challenges getting contractors to bid on these projects. So it's not a guarantee either way. And some of that has to do with just the uniqueness of high voltage lighting is not something everybody's kind of chomping at the bit to go and work on for you. So, and again, if let's say you do contract it out, but it's at let's say a budget level less than 225 per year, you still have to have your staff out doing those retrofits. So there's a real balance of how much you can do. Whatever way you do it, you may have kind of some work put at those retrofits. And then kind of lastly, we talked about We Energies, instead of contractors doing it, having We Energies, which in all reality, they have contractors doing it, and you're just kind of, in some ways, hiring a middleman, and the result of that is you're just kind of paying more to contract it out with a third party involved doing it for you. Again, that doesn't really require more city staff for the city to oversee We Energies contractor to do the work. But it will mean a couple different things, that as We Energies would do this, they will take over the long-term maintenance. So if they go and rebuild the circuit, well, that's not yours to maintain anymore. So piece by piece, you're kind of lowering your general obligation to maintain that lighting as they convert the systems. I would say we have kind of some measures of caution that cost controls and priorities with We Energies doing this is a little bit of a challenge. So you're at their kind of whim. If they got other things they'd rather do, I think it's going to be a hard sell to make them do it. Unlike if you hired a contractor, they're kind of answering to you. We Energies may not be that way. And again, if We Energies doesn't get 225 per year, you're going to be out with city forces doing those retrofits. That's kind of a quick recap of the different methodologies. I don't know if any questions on that. I'll turn it back over to Jake to talk some more numbers. Yep.
So we were able to place numbers on those 3 different methodologies that Mike just talked about. These would be capital construction costs only, so materials and construction removals. As you can see, the city forces is substantially less expensive than contractor forces or We Energies. The cost for city forces. Okay, so this would be the cost of a average circuit. So a typical circuit out on the city of West Allis streets, not per luminaire. I apologize for that, but either way.
Okay, good.
So an average circuit being around 80 lights, you're going to have to do so many of those to complete your 225 per year, the minimum.
How did you calculate using city forces?
So city forces was
we're paying them all year long and they'd only be doing this when the weather is good.
correct. So
Did you figure that in?
yep, city forces was actually calculated based on these recent conversions, the F1 and the A3 circuits. So we have the numbers of what it actually costs the city to do this job, and we
But
can.
I'm talking about if you hire 6 or 8 more people, you're gonna have those on the staff all 12 months of the year and be paying them benefits, and they're not gonna be doing this all
Correct,
12
but
months.
that cost does not go into the capital cost of construction and materials. That is actually a labor cost that is on the next slide.
We're gonna
Okay,
try
so
and
it's not
see
bad.
how much of the winter we can do stuff though, I guess that's what I'm hearing, so.
Yeah. So the city forces was based on these costs that just came out with the F1 and the A3 circuits. The contractor forces were a combination of the bids received for those circuits that were actually decided not to go with at the time, plus our own engineering estimates. We kind of averaged those out. And then the We Energies estimate is just essentially a markup of that because they will be middlemaning the procurement of all the materials and the procurement of a contractor. So they need to make money too. So here's the labor cost that we estimated for a single circuit conversion. With city forces, we estimate that performing one circuit conversion will still be substantially less than having a contractor do it versus having We Energies do it. There will still be some city labor cost associated with having a contractor and We Energies do it, a circuit conversion, because they do need to oversee construction. However, it's obviously substantially less than having 6 to 8 guys out working on the street lighting. The contractor labor was simply pulled from the contractor estimates. Typically, a contractor will include that labor in their construction cost estimate, which is where things get a little hairy trying to compare city force labor to contractor force labor. But if we were to pull out those numbers and just kind of generalize using, a couple engineering estimates, I suppose you could call them, we still find that it's a cheaper labor cost overall to use city forces.
Mr. Chair. Jake, this is again labor cost per luminaire on
Correct,
this one.
yep, same.
The other one was, but still the scale would be the same.
The scale
Just
is still the
multiply that by
same,
80,
correct.
it would still be at the
Correct.
same
I
circuit
apologize for
scale.
that confusion there. And then, so just to reiterate, the minimum pace that we need to perform these conversions is 225 luminaires per year. We assume that will take about 13 years to convert all luminaires. So, using that 13 years as our first priority, we estimate annually that the city will pay approximately 1.8 million. That's including construction cost and city labor cost, subtracting out maintenance savings, energy savings, and focus on energy rebates. Likewise, if you were to hire out all of this work for a contractor, you're looking at maybe 2.5 million. We Energies, you're looking at almost 3 million. So this is annual cost to do 225 low pressure sodium luminaire conversions per year. So that doesn't necessarily mean you're converting 225 lights. You're probably converting 300 lights, but we need to do 225 low pressure sodium lights. So all the other lights are incidental. And like I said, again, the construction cost for a contractor and for We Energies is included in the construction cost because that is how they operate compared to how city funds would operate. This would be the second priority after low pressure sodium luminaires are removed from the system. So that 13 to 19 year benchmark, same ratios, exact same calculations, just slightly smaller circuits. If we extrapolate that data over the 19 years, we can see a compounded cost for how much the city will eventually pay with inflation included. And we're looking at, by the end of this project, the purple line being city forces only, we're looking at on the edge of $20 million in savings, $25 million in savings, compared to having a contractor do all the work. And then I think We Energies kind of excludes itself at this point in time, just based on the giant gap in overall spending. These are those same numbers, just with the value put to them. The main takeaway here would be that with We Energies, you no longer have energy maintenance fees because you're giving them the lights, but you do have an annual fee that you will pay, and that annual fee actually ends up being more than you're currently paying to operate these lights and to maintain these lights. And not only is that your compounded fee after 19 years, but that fee will keep going for the next 300 years, 400 years, whatever it is.
I'll be around by then, you know.
Someone else's problem, right?
Thank you. for
But the
previous
idea, I
slide.
think that's,
So it's about 42 million, 58 million, and 72 million about?
Correct.
Thanks.
Yeah, this one it might be a little easier to estimate. 42, 58, yeah, like you said, 72.
Did you include the cost of purchasing other equipment included in this?
That is not included because we're not totally sure what all needs to be purchased at this point in time. So again, this is sort of everything rounded up. Years until priority one completion, it's the same for all. We need to keep that minimum pace. I think at 13 years is the low end. We estimate an annual budget that the city would need to budget for of between 1.3 and $3 million. And that's, again, capital cost of construction. At the end of this entire 19-year process, the capital cost for construction would be that final column, 30 million, 46 million. So you can see the large difference in using city forces and the benefits to using city forces over the other two methodologies.
I guess real quick, Jake, this does apply inflation kind of year over year?
Correct.
Yes.
Correct. Inflation is applied for each year.
Jake, to verify, a couple slides ago, it showed I thought it showed 1.8 million for city staff for the LPS conversion.
Which, this slide?
One more.
Correct. That is,
Oh, it is one. One more. 1.8 million.
yes.
That has labor,
That has labor included, yes.
so the last column is just capital
The last
costs.
column is just capital, so that blue.
Gotcha. Thank you.
That's just the conduits, wires, kind of the physical construction elements to it.
The way we understand this to work is that the capital cost would come out of essentially one pocket and the labor cost would come out of another pocket.
Got it.
So, again, that's kind of the hairy part where you're, comparing city force labor to construction labor isn't exactly apples to apples all the time.
so basically with We Energy, really, just like you have to have an insurance policy, I know what it is. Just like when you buy a stove or a refrigerator, they say you can buy for 2-3 years. It costs you, say, $150, To me, I'd like to stay away from We Energy, really.
Right.
They're gonna rip us off.
Right.
really.
Well, I suppose my
I
philosophy
use
is
that terminology,
Yeah.
really. They're gonna rip the city right off.
right. My philosophy is that We Energies will not lose this battle. They're
Of
going to
course
come
they're
out on
gonna
top
lose.
somehow.
But kind of like I said before, We Energies is a good fit if you hadn't built anything at all and they're out there trenching in cables
Oh,
for other
yeah.
reasons, then, then it's a little more of a benefit to go with them, and that's why a lot of new subdivisions and kind of newer communities would do that.
Mr. Chair,
Alderman Weigel.
on these potential new city employees, would they all have to be licensed electricians, or could they work them in teams where there's one electrician overseeing laborer, or type
That's,
jobs.
I
And you
think that's exactly right. Maybe
built that into the pricing, so it's not like we're hiring 6 to 8 they're not all electricians.
correct.
Yeah.
Correct. There's a certain positions need to be electricians, certain positions do not. They all need to be dedicated to street lighting conversion.
And they'd probably get real good at it after a while.
That's the idea.
Hopefully.
Hopefully they can get faster.
And
That's
that's,
the
I
idea.
think the experience from this year has shown that to be the case. That the kind of pace has picked up just even in year one, so.
I mean, hypothetically, the engineer doing the design plans should probably be an electrical engineer, but all the rest could probably be technicians, right? Putting up the poles, pouring the bases, pulling wire.
I believe whoever is installing electrical services needs to be licensed.
Okay.
Definitely like connecting to breaker panels.
That part.
All that,
But not to
so
pull
you
the
def-
wire or anything.
But to bore conduit, to hydrovac utilities, there's a lot of labor level stuff that would not require a licensed electricians.
And you took that into consideration in pricing.
The
Yes.
price, well, there's
Employee.
each employee is considered to have the same cost for, we did include benefits, top salary, so capped out salary, and holiday time. So the idea was that hopefully our estimate's a little high, but we also wanted to make sure that we're not shortchanging anyone and that it doesn't come in surprising anybody. As we do figure out what people can be hired and what positions can be filled, we can obviously hone in on that number a lot better. But for now, it's kind of outside looking in, just, you need 6 guys, 8 guys, 10 guys, however many you can get, you know?
What's the season they work? They can work March to December, maybe?
Depends what kind of winter we get, but ideally they can work almost year round.
Experiment with.
And what would they be doing when they're not working? In other words, we have rainy days, they can't go out.
Sorting light
We'd
bulbs.
have a winter where
Sorting
maybe
light
6 weeks or 8 weeks, they can't, are we gonna lay them off?
Mr. Chair, if I could, they could probably do some revamping, help with snow plowing, maybe building maintenance facilities, you know, for a certain period of time. But there is street.
Dave, I'll be honest, that sounds like make work projects to find stuff for guys to keep them busy.
Well, we still have to do.
And that's not our intention here. Our intention is to get this done, period, and not have them make other stuff. We're not looking to fill other positions, we're looking just to get this done. And, you know, I would say, if they're gonna be off for 6 weeks in the winter, you lay them off for 6 weeks then. That's the way it is. That's the way it is in the construction industry. I mean, all these contractors lay their employees off. If it's a rainy day and they can't work, they don't work, they don't get paid. It's the way it is.
That'd be new for us.
So if you're gonna be acting like a contractor, you gotta treat the guys like contractors.
I would say that's definitely a real component of this conversation. It was a little hard to capture that in
Yeah, I know.
kind of the analytics we did, but that's definitely something we've talked a lot about is downtime, so.
Yeah.
I'll, just to make sure we have some time left over, but, so just a real quick kind of recap, I think we talked about basically everything, but kind of the conclusions that what we figured out by working with your staff and looking into the numbers is, you know, we gotta hit the LPS, the low pressure sodium, they're the highest priority, clearly, and then secondarily, you'll go on to the high pressure sodium, so there's a couple clear, objectives in that. We'll set the time frame and we'll kind of balance your priorities. We definitely know with inflation and kind of getting the benefit of lower maintenance and energy that the faster you do it, the more you save in the long run. So if you exceed that 225 pace, you save money in the long run. So city forces, I think, as just a kind of basic calculation, are clearly the lowest cost, but hiring challenges are real. Keeping that rate of progress, just like we were talking about staffing consideration and consistent budgeting. So let's say you miss a year where you can't fund the street lighting projects, then what do you do? So that's something you guys grapple with at all times. So contractor forces are more expendable, but they're going to cost you more. So we Energies, we definitely feel like it's not a great fit and don't necessarily view that as a viable option. I would say we're pretty confident that you're looking at a blend of doing some with contractor and some with city forces as the right approach, at least to begin with. And you can look at, kind of take a look in future years, let's say after your low pressure sodium are done, you take stock, maybe there's a different balance of priorities, a new timeline. But to kind of make adjustments in the future, maybe you are beating the 225 per year, or you're falling short, but at least right now we view that as the benchmark. And this is kind of give you a picture of if you blend contractor and city forces. So we've got, you know, the 225 per year in a all contractor on the left, and an all city on the right, and kind of a 1 to 3, 2 to 1, 3 to 1 ratio. So you can kind of see, and not surprisingly, it just is a pretty linear scale. You're paying more for some things and less for others, and that proportion just changes depending on who's doing the work. And this is that same kind of full, full conversion time frame with all those proportions. So the top being all contractors, you pay the most, the bottom being city forces, and that ratio of different, different amounts by different entities is just going to cost you a little bit more, a little bit less in the long run. This is a graph to show what that first 13 years might look like from an annual capital budget standpoint. So we show kind of in year one, 2019, you put in 600,000 was the number to get to that 225 per year pace, but also factoring in the actual systems you have and your actual priorities. You can see that green line is close to that 1.3 million. But year by year, it goes up, it goes down, because you're taking on bigger systems, smaller systems, and they do fluctuate. So it won't be the same every year, but it averages at that 1.3 number.
Correct. And to reiterate, this is assuming city forces at all projects.
Yes.
This graph is.
This is only for if you
Correct.
do it internally.
And these numbers do represent a real budget plan, real circuits. This will get the job done. There's a lot sort of moving around that we'll need to do, but just as a starting point, this would, for example, complete the projects and complete the job in the 13-year time frame without running out of bulbs. And the ultimate goal is to not go dark, so this would achieve that goal.
Oh, sorry.
Oh,
Here's
I
more.
can back up?
It's just this is the last slide.
Yeah, so I don't know if you had questions here?
No.
Okay, sorry. So, the budget recommendation, maybe if we're to say what's the stable way to kind of fund this, is probably somewhere between $1.5 and $2 million annually, because that's that fluctuation, is you're in that range. And you want to take on the low pressure sodium and get the biggest circuits done first, just so you have less pressure to keep pace with that. So you'll find it less and less urgent over time if you take that approach, and then take another look after you're almost done with those low pressure sodium to figure out, well, where are we at with high pressure sodium. You're going to want to have that same balance over time. Take on the biggest ones, get those done soonest, and then ultimately the whole city is converted, not just with the high voltage circuits, but with a more energy efficient and maintenance friendly LED lighting. Or maybe in 10 years, we're talking about some new lighting technology that,
Stop it.
runs on optimism. Who knows? So,
Optimism.
so
Flux capacitor.
Yeah.
to very quickly kind of those retrofits. So just to remind you, if you don't maintain that 225 kind of pace, this is what you're going to put money into, and this still costs money, and it takes labor, and it takes. If we were to say retrofit the whole city, that's in the neighborhood of $2 million of kind of throwaway investment. So it's a big number. It probably is a factor you're going to have to work with, just knowing that things will come up where maybe if you commit to it, and there's going to be a year where you can't do as much as you'd like, so you're going to be out doing some of these just to keep the lights on. There we go. So that's our presentation. There's a lot more in the numbers, and I guess we're able to kind of provide more detail, but hopefully that helped clarify. If there are questions, let us know.
Mr. Chair. What I wanted to mention is, even if we kept these staff, and I agree with you, if there's a downtime, we might have to assign them to other things, or to lay them off for a while. It's still cheaper to do city staff. And then my next question would actually be for Dave. You know, we talked about construction methods. Is it possible during the summer to have them do nothing but pour bases and set conduit and pull wire, and then come when it gets colder in December, but maybe the snow's not as bad, have them, that's when you have them set up the poles, and that's when you have them wire up the luminaires, and you know, it might be a construction method where in the summer we're gonna do nothing but lay wire and the underground, and in the winter we're gonna do above ground work. That may be a possibility. You might even be able to do more than 4 circuits that way a year.
I think that's definitely a strategy that, you know, just to balance your workforce on things that are easier to do when the weather's nice, and give yourself an opportunity to do things that are at least above the frozen ground level. And I think the only maybe consideration
Snow
is,
piles?
well, you're not gonna have lights in those neighborhoods until the end of winter because you haven't put up any of the light poles. So I think
Oh,
that's
so you
that's
can't
something to
keep,
think
you
about.
can't keep the existing network fired up while you're working on the
That's
second?
that's
That's very,
Tricky?
That's gonna be a problem.
Yeah.
You'd also be restricted by boring capabilities and speeds of the boring rig.
Okay.
If you're
So
only,
you'd lengthen the time that a neighborhood would be dark by doing
I think it's probably pretty safe to say you're gonna have to go without light because, you know, those circuits are in the terrace and those, you know, old bases, new bases are all kind of coexisting. It's probably possible in some cases, but it's gonna be challenging to keep the old in every case, unless you've got them on one side and you put the new on the other side.
That's my other.
You know, there's gonna be cases where that works and there's gonna be cases where that may not work.
But maybe there's something that could be done to help.
correct.
Mr. Chair,
Alderman Vitale.
I would like to say that by talking about 13 years, it could be more than 13 years, the way I look at it, by subcontracting all this project, the way I see it is gonna cost the city a lot more money. I mean, that's my completely thought, you know. I believe if we do in housing, but hires some people to follow through that, I mean, I'd like to repeat that again, I think it'd be more costly effective, really. We're not talking 2 years, like we do on road constructions, which it takes 3 months, 4 months to do it, which we have problems sometimes with the contractors, you know? I mean, they don't finish at the deadline, you know? We have to extend probably for another month or 2 months, maybe sometime a year, like a National Avenue, the same thing. So to me, I think, but just to have our own people doing that, I think it's more effective, because, no, we're not talking about 2 years project, we're talking about more than 13 years here, you know? So to me, so something gonna be digested, and I think talk over more, I mean, to make sure that we do the right thing, really, because it's not cheap, you know?
I'm looking at it and thinking that the approach we should take is the blended approach and hire a contractor initially to do some and have the city crews do some and see what kind of bids we get, see what kind of work they do, how fast they get it done in comparison to our city people. And we do it like that for the first year or two to get a feel for what it's gonna cost and how it's gonna go. And if we find out that the city crews are putting them in as fast and as well and less expensively, we can do future projects and completely with the city. If we find out we're not keeping up, and I'm afraid that we're not gonna be able to keep up with city crews to get it done in 13 years, because we've had trouble hiring people and keeping people, that I think we ought to at least start with contractors working both ways to see how that's gonna work. And if we can build up the staff and get confidence that they're gonna be able to get it done, that's fine. But I think initially, we can't fool around with this, and we better do it both ways.
Mr. Chair?
Alderman Weigel.
I'm going to agree with what the chair says. I think we should start with both. I'm also going to remind people that although right now we're like in a full employment economy, I think it's,
Yeah,
you know,
and it can change.
2 jobs for every guy out there looking for a job right now. And that will change. In the time frame of this program, that will change. There will be a time when the bids are going to come in really low, because when the contractors are looking for work. So I think a hybrid approach, and it can vary over time. What we decide, what this council decides to do this year could change in 2 years. We could hit a recession, there could be contractors begging for work. You know, or we could have to stay committed to using our own staff. But the point of starting immediately is important.
It's any, Alderman May?
I'm not against that idea, but just a reminder, we could double everyone's salary in the electrical area, our electrical department, and still be similar to the cost estimate for a contractor. So I like the idea of, trying something out, but, if it comes down to it and we need to raise those salaries a little bit, it may still be more cost effective over time.
I'd like to see the quotes.
Mm-hmm. Well, we had a couple this year, right? So,
Next step?
Any other comments or questions?
What's the next step?
that's mine too. Next step.
Well, staff come up with a recommendation for us for the next step, what we should be doing. Good. Motion to adjourn?
Oh, I'd like to thank.
Thank you to KL.
Yes.
I make a
Thanks for coming.
motion.
Yeah, thank you.
Appreciate it.
And a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Didn't we have,
K, which is L.
No, that's next, that's next.
include one of those collections in your bid, okay?
Yes.
Call the September 3rd meeting of the Common Council to order. I will ask our clerk to call the roll to determine our quorum.
Alderman Weigel.
Here.
Barzak. Here. Shaplesky.
Here.
Haas.
Here.
Lysick.
Here.
May.
Here.
Frankie.
Here.
Rote. Here. Stefanski. Here. And Vitale.
Here.
That's 10 present.
We have a quorum. Please rise and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance, which will be led this evening by Alderman Marty Weigel.
I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, we will move on to item D on our agendas this evening, which are public hearings. We have 3 of them. I will ask our clerk to read public hearing number 1.
Truth in that, you know that, I know that. Been doing this long enough.
Resolution relative to determination of application for a special use permit for Cream City Print Lounge, a proposed instructor-led print studio to be located at 8010 West National Avenue.
Thank you. Mr. Stiebel?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The first public hearing has to do with the Cream City Print Lounge because it's a printing facility and it has so alcoholic beverages. It has to go under a special Department of Revenue permit process. They have to either have painting or novelty items to be able to work with this with the alcoholic process. Cream City Printing has been printing for a long time. It's been doing a lot of printing of T-shirts and items like that. It'll be a wine and beer snack bar kind of thing. Hours of operation are 5 to 10 p.m. On Sunday through Thursday and 3 to 10, excuse me, on the weekend. It will never turn into a tavern, but it has to be in that printing and novelty business, and the Department of Revenue will be monitoring that. It was going to be located in the downtown area, and it has been moved because they were going to go to Book Solid, and there are some issues with fire codes and other costly products. They moved to another location on National Avenue, so we're glad to see them keeping them in the city of West Allis on about the 800 block of National Avenue. The Plan Commission has reviewed this recommendation, has recommended approval, and we've received no objections to date. If you have any additional questions, I'm glad to answer them.
Thank you, Mr. Stiebel. Are there any questions from the Common Council?
Mayor Devine?
Alderman Weigel?
So John, this hearing tonight is really just about the printing business and them being there. It's not related to any liquor licenses that they may or may not need. Is that correct?
It's what again?
This is just about the printing business.
It's kind of two parts. He does printing of shirts,
Yes.
T-shirts and that sort of stuff. Then he also has people where people could come in and they could, with a group of friends, and they could print their own T-shirts and drink wine and have a cocktail.
Okay, so that's where the alcohol service
Yes.
would be. So the alcohol is just incidental to these
Correct.
parties that they throw. Do you know that if they'll need a license from the city for this business?
No, they will not.
They
This
will
is
not
under
need an
special-
alcohol beverage service license from the
Correct,
city.
under special provision to the State Department of Revenue.
This is this new rule called the kind of the wedding barn rule. Is that
Yeah,
is that
that
what it's
sort
under?
of-
Because the alcohol service, no one would be able to just walk in there and order a beer, a glass of wine. You'd have to book an event there. I just want to make sure I understand what's going on here. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. Would they be required to follow all the other rules as far as, will there need to be a licensed bartender there? Do they need to buy from licensed wholesalers? I mean, there's a lot of things that go along with alcoholic beverage service in Wisconsin.
We'll have that answer for you at recess.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions from the Common Council? Seeing none, are there any questions from the members of the audience? Okay, seeing none, we will close our first public hearing, and I will ask our clerk to read public hearing number 2.
Resolution relative to determination of the application for a special use permit for WA Community Child Care LLC, an existing daycare, to be relocated at 6330 West Greenfield Avenue.
Thank you. Mr. Stiebel?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. At 6330 West Greenfield Avenue is that current condominium building. The ground floor has been vacant ever since the whole building was developed around a dozen years ago. There's 41 condos, so they all sold out fairly quickly after the property was built. There's 20,000 square foot of ground floor commercial that has been virtually vacant until the salon moved in a couple of years ago. There's 88 underground parking spaces and 32 public parking spaces. And because what is being proposed to move in there is a daycare center, it requires a public hearing, and that's the purpose of this public hearing for this evening, to determine whether a special use should be granted. The daycare facility currently operates in two former Allis Charmer buildings, one on 6682 West Greenfield Avenue in that sort of Toshiba building, and the other one is on South 70th Street, which is on the east side of the street, which is being slated for demolition as part of the Cobalt Development Project. And it's this building here, the facilities, that is primarily going to be moving, and the reason for this public hearing. Technically, they have a license capacity of 228 children, and that's for both locations, but they'll be relocating the property on South 70th Street, and they'll be open from 6 a.m. to 9 p.m. In this facility, this is Greenfield Avenue at the bottom here, this is the current site plan, and they're proposing to take some of the parking out and put it in a required green space area for 112 children. We'll talk in a minute about additional parking being relocated over here. The playground would be as noted in here, and I believe they're going to be using Area 2 as the first location for the playground area. They had proposed to take a look at the frontage area to be able to have playground and parking, but the Plan Commission has recommended to not allow that, and so right now they're only going to be looking at renting this facility here. That's about 8,400 square feet on both sides, with about 3,200, I believe, for Mableloo. The additional parking would be in this area here, which is currently owned by the facility, and the parking, the playground area would be here, and parking would be relocated here. They'd actually have 32 public parking spaces today, and they'll have about 44 when they're done. And I apologize for the poor audio problems that we're having today. You can't quite see this, but there's also supposed to be awnings along the storefront of the building that have not been installed, and we're going to be required those be installed as part of this process. As I mentioned, there'll be 44 more parking stalls, and this is the picture, technically, this is the back of the building, and a little better video, you can see this vacant lot here, the house has been torn down, and that's where this parking lot will be installed. And the Plan Commission has recommended approval, and if the playground location, the backyard, the rear yard only, additional parking had to be provided, and then the storefront awnings be installed. We have received one written objection to date, and if you have additional questions, I'd be glad to answer them.
Thank you, Mr. Stiebel. Are there any questions from the Common Council on this item?
Mayor Devine?
Alderman Barzak.
John, we're having a public hearing. Were the residents of that facility notified of this public hearing?
The city notifies everybody,
So-
and
so
I
everybody
think
in
what
that-
part of the problem is that the ownership did not notify the residents before they got their notice from the city, but hopefully they're working with them now to seek input.
One more time with that, what did you just say?
The city did notify all the residents,
So the city notified everybody
yes,
in that building?
in that building.
Okay. But
Now,
the-
technically, the
whoever owns the
ownership should have
building-
notified them first, but they did. I'm sorry, what did you say?
So whoever owns that building did not inform the residents of
I
that
believe they
building?
informed the residents after the
This plan.
city did.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Thank you,
Mayor
Alderman.
Devine?
Any other questions from the
Mayor
Common
Devine?
Council? Alderman
Um,
Stefanski.
Did I miss a thing about what the hours of operation were for the daycare?
No, they were, let me just roll that back.
6 to 9? Okay.
It ends at 9 p.m., 6 a.m. to 9 p.m.
Oh, there it was, okay. All right, thank you.
Any other questions from the council?
Mayor Devine,
Alderperson Ranky.
John, Greenfield Avenue is extremely busy, traffic-wise. Where will the parents drop their children off and pick them up?
In the back of the building. There's 32 parking spaces
place in the
there.
back?
Probably one of the better places to drop kids off that we have in any of our daycare facilities. Because the 41 condominiums have 88 underground parking, so most all condominiums are in the basement, and their visitors are in those 32, which will now be 44.
Will the parents be informed that they shouldn't drop the children off in the front at all?
I don't know if we prohibited dropping off on the frontage.
I see.
We could certainly talk to them about that, because they're going to have 3 signs that would be relatively low traffic volumes. That would be a lot easier to do that.
I see.
But knowing parents, they're going to drop them off wherever they can drop them off.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions from the Common Council?
Mr. Mayor,
Alderman Vitale?
of course, it's right in my district, so I have to really address the fact that, to me, I mean, I'm not really foreseeing any problems, in the future, but we did experience one time right on Beecher Street, for 10 kids, somebody applied to put a daycare there and was, of course, denied it. And to me, I mean, the building, I look at it right now, I drive by, right across from Jefferson Elementary School. It looks really a little bright in my estimations, but at that time was denied because, for reasons, So to me, I mean, a daycare, that's a good thing, I mean, if the tenants are from those apartments or condos, in that location, they're happy with that, I don't really see any problems. I mean, kids have got to go someplace, and today it's a big needing for, really. I'm not opposing, I mean, I shouldn't say that, but I feel strong about it. Thank you.
Thank you, Alderman. Are there any other questions from the members of the Common Council on public hearing number 2? Seeing none, are there any questions or comments from the members of the audience? If you are here to speak on this, we ask that you come up to the podium and please sign in either before or after your comments. We will need your name and address for our official record.
All right. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Thank you, Mayor Devine and the Common Council. I'm a little nervous. I'm here to
No worries.
represent Lula May Aesthetic Boutique. My name is Michael Hopkins. I'm the father of Danielle Hopkins Bogrant, the owner of the spa. She was unable to attend, but she felt so passionate that she be heard that she asked me to step in for her. She wrote this for me, so I'm just going to read it.
Sure.
Okay. Currently, Lula May is the only commercial property renters in the building. As a day spa, our main concern is providing ease to our guests when they are enjoying relaxing services. 2.5 years ago, Danielle chose this location to start and grow her business because of the community West Allis serves and a quiet residential feel of the building. Lula May provides services to guests for self-care needs, including quiet, relaxing, non-stimulating services. Putting a daycare on the reverse side of Lula May walls would greatly affect her new and growing business. It is only natural that we have some concerns that need to be addressed. We will continue to follow the development moving forward as we have many questions and concerns, including timing, build-out, details, noise, issues, parking, etc., and you addressed some of those. She has additional questions. I don't know if this is, she may have a lot of additional questions because this is going to affect her business, she feels, in a negative way. So I don't know if this is the time to, or if she can reach out to people about other questions and concerns at a different time, or?
She can contact me or her alderpersons or the development department.
Okay.
And, so I'm sure we'll all be happy to walk her through the questions and get her answers.
Well, I don't know if it's premature to do that, or, I mean.
I don't think so.
All right, so I'll just leave that up to her to do.
Sure.
Okay?
Thank you.
Thank you.
And please remember, if you haven't signed in, to sign in either before or after, and then give us your name and address.
I won't multitask. My name is Kim Bender. I'm a resident of 6330 West Greenfield, and I'm on the back of the building. The residents may not en masse be here. I am strongly opposed to this, basically because of the noise. You have children that are going to be loud. Yes, they start at 6 in the morning. What time do the employees arrive? Employees are going to have music playing in their vehicles. They're going to have alarms chirping as they turn them off. They're going to be talking on cell phones. Parents are going to be coming and talking with the children. Then reverse all of this at 9 p.m. I get up at 4:45 to go to work. I'd like to know when I'm supposed to be sleeping during all of this. This is not a good match. This business and this building do not belong together. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anybody else have comments or questions on this item? You're all good? Yeah. Okay. Oh, someone in the back? You can come on up.
Sorry, I had to sign in.
Hi there. My name is Tom Wahovich. I'm actually the owner of the child care on the agenda today.
I'm sorry, can you give us an address? Just-
I'm sorry. 6682 West Greenfield Avenue and the 1126 South 70th Street, both locations. Basically, we just wanted to come here to answer any questions that anybody would have, or any concerns that they would have, or if they want any information about us. Obviously, we would address any concerns that you would have about noise. Definitely work with you to try to figure out what would be the best for you and the rest of the tenants in the facility. Obviously, any city issues, parking, parent drop-off, we would work through all that as well. So if anybody had any questions and they want to speak to us now or maybe afterwards, or definitely help out.
My name is Sherry Pape. I work with Tom. I just wanted to address a few things that I heard tonight already. The first is about parents and parking. We would strongly not encourage anybody to be parking on Greenfield Avenue. That entrance would actually be locked, so nobody could even get in there. Everything would happen through the back for safety. Regarding the spa, the sound, that is something we've talked about, and actually you had addressed that as well. We have somebody with us today that knows something about construction, and it is something we've talked about quite a bit, about having soundproofing, because we have been part of other multi-tenant buildings before, and we've always worked really hard to be a very good neighbor, a very good tenant, policing ourselves to make sure we're not causing extra drama. So sound would definitely be something we'd be talking about more to make sure that's not an issue. Regarding employees, staff, we run a pretty professional business. We brought some handouts tonight about our business and Tom's contact information. So if you had any specific questions, we would be happy to talk to you and address your concerns. So moving forward, everybody's happy. So.
Thank you. I think if there are questions, we'll probably have you take them in the hallway or during the committee process. We'll have time to.
Just wanted to address those for you.
Great.
Thanks
Thank
so
you.
much.
Thank you. Any other members of the audience have comments or questions on public hearing number 2? Okay, seeing none, we will close our second public hearing, and I will ask our clerk to read public hearing number 3.
2019-2020 Class A beer and cider license application of Quick Trip, Inc. Ryan R. Giesing, agent, DBA Quick Trip number 1047, for the premises located at 10923 West Lapham Street, new non-existing location, in regard to exceeding the quota.
Thank you. Mr. Stiebel.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The city approved a special use for this facility back in November of 2018, and the purpose of the public hearing tonight is to exceed the quota. I think our quota is currently at 130, and this would allow it to exceed to be 131. As noted on the slide there, it'd be a Class A self-imposed license for beer only. If you have additional questions, I'd be glad to answer them.
Thank you. Any questions from the Common Council on public hearing number 3?
Mr. Mayor,
Alderman Barzak.
just a little bit of a correction. I think you said that we're at 130 licenses and this would be 31. Correction would be we're at 30 licenses. This would be 31.
Excuse me.
That's my.
Noted.
Stand corrected.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Alderman Rote.
You said beer, and then they show Beer Cave, and we're seeing beer and cider. What is the cider? I don't know what that element is.
Our city attorney is coming up. There is a state provision he's going to explain eloquently to us.
Thanks for the pressure, Mayor. If you issue a Class A beer license, there's a very special provision that was enacted a few years ago that then makes a cider license available as a mandatory issue license. And all the cider licenses is basically the ciders, the fruit-based alcoholic beverages are not technically fermented malt beverages. They are technically an intoxicating liquor, so it wouldn't qualify under the beer license, but the state has essentially said by policy they're the same thing. So if you issue a beer license, the cider license has to come with it. If you don't issue the beer license, then the cider license is not an issue.
Alderman Rote.
Intoxicating liquor.
It is, a cider is like a,
We just prohibited those a month ago.
correct. So a regular intoxicating liquor Class A license is not allowed, and so they couldn't sell certain types, but there's a very narrow definition of intoxicating liquors called ciders, which is a low alcohol content fruit-based alcoholic beverage. That would automatically go with a Class A beer license if the applicant wants one. And that is a state law, one of the few ones where it's mandatorily issued, but it is, again, a conditional one, only if the council grants that Class A beer.
The cider lobby is very strong in Wisconsin. Any other questions or comments from the Common Council?
Mayor Devine?
Alderman May.
Just a quick note that myself and the company I work for are under contract by Quick Trip to do a number of studies within Wisconsin, and therefore I will be recusing myself from a vote on this issue.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, if I could note, if they do plan on opening this gas station in mid-September. And I think also the car wash is open at the same time.
Thank you.
With or without a liquor license.
Okay. Any other questions from the council? If not, we'll go to the audience. Did you have something? Oh.
Well, I wasn't really planning on saying anything, not really sure what to expect. My HR team hasn't really fully prepared me for this, but
I'm sorry, can you give us your name and address?
I'm
please?
sorry,
That's
I'm
okay.
Ryan, Ryan Geeson. I will be the agent at 10923 West Lapham.
Okay.
All I can really say is the company that I work for, we don't take any sales of intoxicating beverages lightly at all. We have an excellent ID check, compliance check rate. Our POS system locks us out until we actually scan the ID into the register. Coworkers complete in-house training along with the Learn to Serve. Continuously stressing in my store meetings in previous stores that I've run the importance of IDing for alcohol and tobacco. We do not only discipline our employees when we have our own ID checks as well. So we send people around to make sure that we're in compliance more than just what the city does. And when they do pass those, we do reward them for passing those as well. We have detailed policies as to which IDs are acceptable. And the only way to lock and unlock the beer cave would be from behind the register. It's something I think pretty unique. That's all I really got.
Okay.
There will be good practices at Quick Trip in West Allis, opening September 13th.
Thank you.
5 a.m.
Are there any other comments or questions from the members of the audience? Okay, seeing none, we will close public hearing number 3. And we will move on to item E on our agendas, which is citizen participation. This is the opportunity for residents to address the council on any matters of interest to them. Is there anybody that wishes to address the council under citizen participation this evening? Seeing none, we will close citizen participation and move to item F. Our standing committees will be meeting during recess. Those room numbers are listed on your agendas on the top of page 2. Moving on to item G, the mayor's report. I have just a couple of things to mention. We have a lot of events coming up in the next 2 weeks, starting with tomorrow morning. I've talked a few times, and you may have seen on the city's website and social media about the Better Block Foundation and their project that is being done in the neighborhood of 60th and Burnham. That process and build is actually probably underway right now, but it officially kicks off tomorrow morning. And then on Friday evening and Saturday afternoon, there will be an official reveal of all the construction and changes and plantings and bike lanes and all the different proposals they are going to put in place on this intersection. So this is not just for residents that live in that neighborhood, but this is for anybody in the city or the surrounding communities to stop by and check out. We're going to work with them to put forth a lot of ideas, and we want to hear what you all think about their proposals and what we may want to try to make permanent and what we may not want to try to proceed with. If that's not enough on Friday, we also have the final installation of our food truck events at the West Allis Farmers Market. If you have not noticed, next to the West Allis Cheese and Sausage Shop, the coffee and craft beer Station 6 is open. We are having a ribbon cutting tomorrow, Wednesday. And then next Friday, the 13th, is going to be the second annual version of Art on the Plaza, which is going to be outside City Hall here on that Friday evening. Again, there will be live music, family activities, food trucks, and art displays. And the party will conclude on the 14th when the Downtown Business District will have their Wood and Wings event. All this information and details are on the city's website and on the city's social media. The Wood and Wings is a competition among all the restaurants in the city that have amazing chicken wings, and it is partnered with a project with our forestry department to kind of upcycle a lot of trees that are taken down and turning them into art that are, Diane, just give me a head nod, these are auctioned off. Is that still the plan this year? Auctioned off. So come and eat and shop and check out more art. That concludes the mayor's report this evening. We'll move to item H. Are there any reports from the alderpersons this evening?
Mayor Devine?
Alderman Weigel.
On the wooden wings, I just want to also add that there'll be an Alaskan Mill demo where they like live cut slab trees into big slabs. You see that live edge wood. There'll be a wood carving or chainsaw carving going on, and there'll be a hammer schlagen too if you want to swing a hammer a little bit.
Thank you. Any other alderpersons' reports? Okay.
Mayor Devine,
Alderman Lysick.
I move for approval of the minutes of the Common Council meeting of August 6th, 2019.
Second.
We have a motion. We have a second. Are there any changes to the minutes? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Motion carries. Moving to item J, I'll ask for a motion to place item 5 on file and refer items 6 and 7 to the city attorney.
So moved. Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Motion carries. The standing committee reports under license and health.
Mayor Devine,
Alderman Chaplesky.
I will read those out after recess.
Thank you.
Mayor Devine,
Alderman Lysick.
I move that we stand in recess until conclusion of the committee meeting.
Second.
There is a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? We are in recess.
Then municipal code for prepaid debit cards.
Mr. Chair?
Alderman Weigel is
So
here to
this
sponsor.
is a change to a policy that we instigated, or was one of our requisites with the pawn shop. Didn't want people walking out of the pawn shop with large amounts of cash in their hand. Okay, so we made them issue checks over a $250 amount. I think that's what it was. So if you came in and pawned something super valuable, the thinking was that their customers would be less likely to be victims of a crime. Also, maybe if their customer would be less likely to walk around with a lot of cash than some of those cash-based transactions that sometimes people associate with a pawn shop that might happen in the neighborhood, be less likely to happen. What they're asking here is to lift the check requirement and allow them to issue, I think it's their own brand of debit card. And honestly, it's been quiet over there with them. I mean, there was a big flurry of problems there when they first opened up. I don't have a problem with changing along their brand of debit card. I don't know, I mean, still there's a pin on it, so if your debit card gets stolen, you know, the thief can't use it unless they force you to give them the pin. I don't know about the other issue about those kind of cash transactions that we might not, I don't know who does and doesn't take debit cards anymore in the business. I don't do.
Most places.
I move approval. I mean, legitimate businesses accept credit cards.
We have a motion, do we have a second?
Marty, second. Oh, the landscape, second. Yeah, yeah.
A motion and a second, is there any further discussion?
And they're gonna bring the landscaping up to a new level.
They have.
They've done, the landscaping's all done?
They satisfied the requirements of the planning department, which has allowed
Okay.
this to move forward.
Okay, yeah.
Is there any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion carries. We have item number 44, Police Department report.
Move the place on file.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Then we have items 45, 46, 47, 48, 49, I'm sorry, 48, 49, and that's it.
Move to place on file.
Vote second there?
Yes.
Any further discussion on these items? All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion carries. Then we have item number 56, Class B special event for the Brass Monkey,
Move approval,
Second.
subject to necessary requirements.
of course.
Same as the second.
Is there any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion carries. Then we have another special event for Heather Rodriguez from Stingers. Let's see, 95th in Greenfield,
Move approval,
Second.
subject to necessary requirements.
of course, always.
Is there any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion carries. Then we have 58, which is various license.
Move approval.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion carries. Then we have another
Mr. Chair.
Stingers. Wait a second.
Mr. Chair.
Uh,
On item number 58, I think I see a name on here from somebody that we were gonna call in from our committee. Am I misreading that fourth name, fifth name down on that list of number 58? Am I misremembering the
Do you
committee?
have the council agenda? It's on there.
Yeah, it's on the front.
What's the name?
Rocio Castro. From our committee where we,
Yeah, we recommended they get a letter.
yeah,
That was an inadvertent placement. I'll remove that.
Check the other ones here.
yeah,
Same with Patrick Regan
yes.
and Mr. Piscatello.
All three of them are on?
Yeah.
All right. I gotta train my staff on the new procedures too.
So, Mr. Chair, I'd like to amend my motion to approve. We voted on it?
We voted on it already.
Okay.
Motion to reconsider. Number
Second.
58.
Uh,
We can do that.
Yes.
Right. Can we have, can you see that right away?
Mhm.
Okay. So, we have a motion and a second on the reconsideration. All in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Then we have a motion.
Mr. Chair, move approval of item 58 with 3 names deleted or held out, Rocio Castro, Joseph T. Piscatello, and the Patrick J. Regan,
So,
Second.
approval as amended.
as amended.
So, he seconded. So we gotta cross this off. Okay. Is there any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion carries.
Good catch.
Then we have item number 59. This is another
2 weeks in a
Class
row.
B.
Yeah. Move
For
approval.
Second.
approval subject to necessary requirements.
Always.
Second by Haas. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Then we have another Class B
Move
special event.
approval of item number 60.
Second.
Subject to necessary requirements. Is there any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Then we have number 61, schedule for successor agent.
Do we approve it or place on file? I move for approval.
Second.
Is there any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion carries. And then we have the license for Quick Trip,
I move approval.
Second.
subject to necessary requirements.
Yes.
Second by Rote. Any further discussion?
Mr. Chair, in
Alderman
all,
Weigel.
in all forthcomingness, I want everybody to know that I have a Quick Trip rewards card. That doesn't disqualify me from voting on this, does it?
Do you feel it's unethical?
Well, I'm just being forward of it, I already know about that. 39 cents a pound for bananas.
I think that's a benefit everyone has access to.
Oh, I guess it is.
Is there any?
What?
Is there any further relevant discussion? All in favor? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed?
No.
Present.
Oh, man. Okay, motion carries. I believe that's all we have.
Move to
Adjourn.
adjourn. Okay, so recess.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone
Aye.
opposed? We are adjourned.
All right, I'll call the Administration and Finance Committee to order. All 5 members are present. Item 11 is a charter ordinance number 23 to repeal charter ordinance number 19 to provide referendum on issuance of general obligation bonds.
Move
With it-
approval.
Yeah, we have a second from Alderman Weigel. All right, we have a motion. Can I have a second, please? The chair will second.
Yeah, for
All right,
discussion.
there we go.
Otherwise, we can't talk about it.
So, yeah, and what this is just increasing the ceiling on how much we can borrow just for road projects because we got a lot of road projects coming up. Yes, please.
In the past, we borrowed 2 3/4 million, 2.75, correct?
Yes.
We're going up to 3.75. And there was always that, we discussed it a little bit today, there's always that little bit on the backside where we do the miscellaneous repairs, like a major, like some Beecher Avenue repair, or Beecher Street repairs and things like that. Is that still gonna stay the same amount, or is that gonna creep up also? What is the amount?
For roads versus patching?
Right, roads versus patching, is it like,
The $250,000 patch, that wouldn't change.
okay, we're gonna do a $250,000 even when we go up to 3.75?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
And that would be included in the 3.7.
Right.
Yes, please, Ms.
The
Grill.
utilities would probably go up if we're doing more projects, the utility department.
Any further discussion?
Mr. Chair.
Alderman May.
The thing that confuses me in this, the way this is jacketed is and provide a referendum.
Yes.
What is that all about? I mean, I understand that when we pass this, there's 60 days for people to object. And at any time in the future, if we want to go above this amount, we either have to pass a new charter ordinance or we have to go to referendum for it. But it says, and provide are we going to go to referendum to ask taxpayers if they want to spend another million on roads? Borrow another million on roads?
Ms. Grill.
Only if someone would object with the petition, if they would file the petition to object, and I think maybe what, like 7% of
The last governor's
rate?
election or something, yeah.
So then there would be a referendum.
Okay.
I'm not sure.
And
The wording is consistent, I think, with what we've had previously for.
it looked like a copy paste from the past charter ordinance with the dollar amount changed. Yeah, and maybe the previous one being repealed, being changed. In general, I don't like borrowing for things like roads. And I've made this point in the past. Every year we're going to spend $3.75 million, and eventually we're going to end up paying $3.75 million plus interest to pay for roads. So in the end, long term, this doesn't get the taxpayer anywhere but paying more bank interest because it's recurring. At the same time, I understand the budget realities that we're at with expenditure restraint and things coming down, from Madison on that, and our inability to pay for roads that way. So on this one, I'm a bit torn. The truth is, our roads are getting to the point where we likely need this amount. But again, I wish we could find a way to do this more on a cash basis, because in the end, this just benefits banks in the long run, in my opinion.
And Alderman Weigel always makes the valid point that interest is cheap, or money is cheap, interest is low. That's a reason for us to take advantage of this time period of low interest rates. The cost of money is low to take advantage of that. That'd be something I would add in.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, well, Ms. Grill, yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say that the additional $1 million would add $120,000 of interest each year, which would go up. So the first year's
repayment each year.
Yeah.
So interest would be about 200,000 over 10 years. 120, 100 of it is principal, 20 is interest.
Oh.
That would be the annual payment on $1 million. So in year 2 it would be 240, 260, up to 1.2 million at the high point after 10 years, because usually our street debt is 10-year debt.
if you're borrowing the 3.7.
Mr. Chairman.
Alderman May, yes.
I would make the point that interest is cheap now. That in a year or two, it may not be
And
cheap.
future councils can decide to borrow less.
Exactly. Future councils can agree to borrow less. And again, I do see the need in our roads and our infrastructure for the additional amount. And I don't want to see our roads go into further disrepair. And so I'll leave it at that for now.
All right, any further discussion? We have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Oh, it's 4 in favor, 1 opposed. Stand by one moment while I do some. Okay. Item 12, resolution authorizing banking services contract extension.
Move for approval.
Thank
Second.
you, sir. Motion and second. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. And item 13, resolution
Move
approving.
for approval.
Second.
A motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Item 14, resolution approving sub-grantee agreements and interdepartmental agreements by and between the City of West Dallas, CDBG things.
Move approval.
Motion from Alderman Weigel.
Second.
Second from Alderman Rote. Any discussion? Please.
These are just the standard requirements to enter into contracts with various agencies that are receiving community development block grant funds, such as WIBIC, Wisconsin Women's Business Initiative Corporation. And we also do an internal agreement for the funding too, so that it makes sure that we monitor their beneficiary reporting and how the money will be distributed, et cetera.
Thank you, Mr. Schloss. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Item 15, Finance Director, Controller.
Move for approval.
Second.
We gotta place that on file. Yeah.
Just place.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well,
Move place on the file.
Yeah, thank you. Motion and a second to place on file. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. And a report from the Finance Director Comptroller, of the 2018 Comprehensive Annual Financial Report. Do we want to have a discussion of that? Thank you, Marty.
On September
for pointing
9th?
that out to me.
We'll take-
Let's have a discussion about that on September 9th
6 PM?
at 6 PM. Yes.
Items
Ms. Grill, yes.
16 through 20 could be held. Number 17 could just be held until capital improvement committee is further along.
Sure, and the
It's just-
Capital Improvement Committee is meeting tomorrow. Thank you for that. All right, and then, so, yeah, with no objection, we'll hold items 16 through 20. And then, can I have a motion to approve the city attorney claim report as indicated in our agenda?
Second.
A motion from Alderman Rote and a second from Alderman Chaplesky. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. And anything else properly to come before the committee?
Move to adjourn?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
We're adjourned. Thank you, everybody. I thought I'd share with everybody.
We will call the Common
You're not
Council back to
smart
order.
anymore, huh?
I will ask our clerk to call the roll.
Alderman Weigel.
Here.
Barzak.
Here.
Chapleski. Here. Haas.
Here.
Lysick.
Here.
May.
Here.
Ranky.
Here.
Rote. Here. Stefanski.
Here.
And Vitale.
Aye.
That's 10 present.
Aye.
We have a quorum. Alderman Haas, up and ready for the Administration and Finance Committee.
Mayor Devine. The Administration and Finance Committee met and acted on the following items. Items 12 through 14 were adopted, 15 was placed on file, and 21 through 25, nope, strike that, 21 through 26 were placed on file, 27 was denied. That was the action of all 5 members of the committee. I move for approval of that portion of the committee report.
Second.
We have a motion and a second by Alderperson Reinke. Is there any discussion? Seeing no discussion, Mr. Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderman Weigel.
Aye.
Barzak.
Aye.
Chapleski.
Aye.
Haas.
Aye.
Lysick.
Aye.
May.
Aye.
Ranky.
Aye.
Rote. Stefanski.
Aye.
And Vitale.
Aye.
That's 10 ayes.
Motion carries.
And item 11 was passed by the committee with 4 members in favor and 1 opposed. I move for approval of item 11.
Second.
We have a motion, we have a second. Is there any discussion?
Mayor Devine,
Alderman May?
I just want to make a quick statement. I made it in committee as well. In general, this type of recurring debt I am not in favor of. In the end, all it does is favor the banks. If you think about it, every year we're going to borrow $3.75 million, and eventually we're going to be paying the $3.75 million plus interest. However, the state legislature has also tied our hands with expenditure restraint and such. And if you recall, probably 3 or 4 years ago, we sent them a resolution from us saying that we wish they would provide an exception to that limit, that levy limit, based on road construction. And they took no action, as I think most of us probably expected they would. And so, in general, we can't allow our roads to continue to deteriorate, and that's why I voted in favor of this, even though I'm against recurring debt in general. We simply cannot allow our roads to continue the disrepair and wait for Madison to do its job in allowing us to raise the necessary funds to do this without bonding. So, thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Any other discussion on item 11? Okay. Seeing none, Mr. Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderman Weigel.
Aye.
Barzak.
Aye.
Chapleski.
No.
Haas.
Aye.
Lysick.
Aye.
May.
Aye.
Ranky.
Aye.
Rote. Aye. Stefanski.
Aye.
And Vitale.
Aye.
That's 9 yeses and 1 no.
Motion carries.
Thank you, Mayor Devine.
Thank you. Next up is the Public Works Committee, Alderman Barzak.
Mayor Devine. I would like to bring your attention to items number 28 through 32 on tonight's agenda. All have been approved by all 5 members of the committee, and I move for adoption of the committee's report.
Second.
There's a motion with a second by Alderman Vitale. Is there any discussion? Seeing no discussion, Mr. Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderman Weigel.
Aye.
Barzak.
Aye.
Chapletsky.
Aye.
Haas.
Aye.
Lysick.
Aye.
May.
Aye.
Frankie.
Aye.
Rote. Stefanski.
Aye.
And Vitale.
Aye.
That's 10 yes.
Motion carries.
Mayor Devine, that is all. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll move on to the Safety and Development Committee. Alderman Lysick.
Mayor Devine. I refer you to items 33 and 35 through 40 on your agendas, various resolutions and communications. All of those items acted upon favorably by all 5 members of the committee. I move for adoption of the committee report.
Second.
There is a motion and a second by Alderman Barzak. Is there any discussion? Seeing no discussion, Mr. Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderman Weigel.
Aye.
Barzak.
Aye.
Chapletsky.
Aye.
Haas.
Aye.
Lysick.
Aye.
May.
Aye.
Frankie.
Aye.
Rote. Stefanski.
Aye.
And Vitale.
Aye.
That's 10 yeses.
Motion carries.
I then refer you to item 34 on your agenda. This is a resolution amending the development agreement between the City of West Allis and a developer, Lincoln Hospitality Group LLC, regarding Lincoln West Corridor Development Project, acted upon favorably by all 5 members of the committee. I move for adoption of the committee report on that item.
Second.
There is a motion with a second by Alderman Barzak. Is there any discussion? Seeing no discussion, Mr. Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderman Weigel.
Aye.
Barzak.
Aye.
Chapletsky.
Aye.
Haas.
Aye.
Lysick.
Aye.
May.
Aye.
Frankie.
Aye.
Rote.
No.
Stefanski.
Aye.
And Vitale.
Aye.
That's 9 yeses and 1 no.
Motion carries.
That's all, Mayor.
Thank you. Follow up with the License and Health Committee, Alderman Chapletsky.
I'd like to bring everyone's attention to items 8 through 10. These are various license and reports voted on by 4 members, with 1 member excused. Then we have items 44 through 49. These are various reports placed on file. 56 through 61. These are license voted for approval or approval subject to necessary requirements by all 5 members. I'd like to move for approval of this portion of the committee's report.
Second.
There's a motion with a second by Alderperson Ranky. Is there any discussion? Seeing no discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Motion carries.
Then we have item number 62. This is, was voted for approval by 3 members, with 1 member voting no and 1 member being excused. I'd like to move for the adoption of this portion of the committee's report.
Second.
There's a motion and a second by Alderman Weigel. Any discussion?
Mayor Devine.
Alderman Barzak?
Normally, I think everybody knows almost on this council that I would vote against any license that would be over quota. But I've stated in the past, even to development, before we increased the quota from 20 licenses up to 30 licenses, that we should be careful where we set our parameters to increase it or to go over quota. In this particular case, the developer took a blighted site, which used to be, of course, Red Carpet West Allis. Nothing was going in there. They leveled the site. There was no city money. It was not a TIF, nothing. Did it all on his own. Spent, I believe, over $14 million. I can't remember the exact figures. But I think when a developer comes in here and spends that type of money, and I would hope that the License and Health Committee might meet at some point and come up with some parameters on when a license should be over quota when there's a major development like this. We discussed over on 66th Street with the developments over there, whether we would support going over quota if somebody came in like a grocery store or something like that. And I've all along said, they're coming in and they're redeveloping something and it's major, that I would support any license over quota for something like that. I don't support licenses for somebody that did a maybe a $30,000 renovation to their property or did a little bit of upkeep to put a business in there. But when it comes to something this major, I believe this is where going over quota is warranted, and I'm going to support that particular license tonight based on that it is a major development where major money was spent and took something that was extremely blighted and made it look what I'm going to consider pretty nice. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor Devine?
Any other discussion, Alderman Stefanski?
Everybody on the council here knows I'm not a fan of giving licenses out to gas stations. Never have, I never will be. I appreciate what Quick Trip has done and changed that area and built it up, and I'm looking forward to Quick Trip coming in there. However, I don't think a gas station is a place for any kind of alcoholic beverage. So that's just what I wanted to share with you.
Thank you. Any
Mr.
other
Mayor.
discussion, Alderman Vitale?
Yeah, based on the, some of the statements, Alderman Barsek said, the fact stands that, once you start weigh the fact that somebody invests, say, $100,000, and then somebody's spending $10 million, I mean, how can you deviate? I mean, by saying that you spent $200,000, so we're not going to give you a license, but because I spent $10 million, then I'll give you a license, To me, it's not really a legality. I think it's more, it's going to create we open up a can of worms, really, by doing that. To me, I mean, I understand and I understand, you spend a lot of money, the developer, I mean, that's great. But the bottom line is, if a poor businessman comes and they got $100,000 to invest within the city, and we're going to say no to him because you spent $100,000. To me, it's not the proper line for the city to move forward, So, thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments from the Common Council? Seeing none, Mr. Clerk, please call the roll.
Mr. Chair, just for the record, Alderman May expressed that he's recusing himself, so I will not be calling his name during roll call vote. Alderman Weigel?
Aye.
Barzak?
Aye.
Chapletsky?
Aye.
Haas?
Aye.
Lysick?
Aye.
Reinke?
No.
Rote?
No.
Stefanski?
No.
And Vitale.
No.
That's 5 yeses and 4 noes.
Motion carries.
Then we have item number 43, this is an ordinance. It was voted by all 5 members to pass it. I move for the remainder part of the committee's report.
Second.
There is a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Ordinance 43. Okay. No discussion. Mr. Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderman Weigel?
Aye.
Barzak?
Aye.
Chapletsky?
Aye.
Haas?
Aye.
Lysick?
Aye.
May?
Aye.
Reinke?
Aye.
Rote? Aye. Stefanski?
Aye.
And Vitale.
Aye.
That's 10 yeses.
Motion carries. Thank you. Next up, we have the Advisory Committee, Alderperson Reinke.
Mayor Devine. I direct the council's attention to items number 63, 64, 65, and 66 on tonight's agenda. We had 3 reappointments and 1 appointment favorably approved by the committee. I move for their approval. Mayor Devine.
Second.
There is a motion with a second by Alderman Lysick. Is there any discussion? Seeing no discussion, Mr. Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderman Weigel?
Aye.
Barzak?
Aye.
Chapletsky?
Aye.
Haas?
Aye.
Lysick?
Aye.
May?
Aye.
Reinke?
Aye.
Rote? Aye. Stefanski?
Aye.
And Vitale.
Aye.
10 yeses.
Motion carries.
That's all, Mayor.
Thank you.
Mayor Devine,
Alderman Lysick.
I move that we adjourn until our next regularly scheduled meeting, Tuesday, September 17th at 7 p.m.
Second.
There is a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? We are adjourned.